conversation, presentation, moderation that I say, is that, oh, thank you so much for that. Let me just highlight this, that the meeting is being recorded. If you choose not to be recorded, please, you can just turn off your camera, keep it off, change your name, whatever you're comfortable with. You just have to confirm that you got it and you know that you will be on camera and possibly used at a later date. So again, I just like to always elevate and say that for the sake of me speaking, I will use terms such as mother, female, breastfeeding, and those are typically because that's how I speak. Those are how I identify as a breastfeeding mother of 6 years. But I also do understand and respect that not everybody identifies with such terms. And I always like to elevate that and respect that and acknowledge that. But it's just for me, for the sake of flow within my speaking, that I will use such terms. I'm always very excited anytime I am able to speak for lactation. I'm ultimately passionate about it. Like I said, I am a breastfeeding mother of 2 children, breastfed for over 6 years, and I really want to just ensure that all babies have the opportunity to receive human milk, and there is no reason for them not to. Oftentimes, it's just simply through a lack of education, understanding, and support. And so, if I can change that in any way, because I know, like I said, the effects that it has had on me and also my children as well. So, my name is Akila Russell. I am a board certified lactation consultant and certified childbirth educator. I've been doing this work for about since my son was born, so almost 8 years now. And my daily work consists of supporting high risk infants and ensuring that they have the resources and support to continue on with their breastfeeding journey. So lots of our moms have babies in the NICU, other issues such as tongue ties and things like that, which can definitely debunk breastfeeding. So I just ultimately want to make sure that these moms are getting supported. And happy Black Breastfeeding Week and the end of almost the end of Black Breastfeeding Week and the end of Breastfeeding Awareness Month. So I will not take another second of your time, Stacy. I will turn it over to you, allow you to introduce yourself and dive into this fantastic presentation you have.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Oh, it's so great to be here. I love all things lactation, all things birthy. I have been doing this work for longer than I think itself. I've actually been doing lactation work for about 10 years now, or just over 10 years that being dived in. I'm a lactation consultant at IBCLC. I'm a doula. I'm a childbirth educator. I'm a mother of 5 kids that I've breastfed. And
Oh,
yeah, so I just love the relationship that I've had. I've learned so much through them, but I always say the majority of what I do know is from the parents that I've served. It's really from the parents that I've served. And as Akila said, for myself, the terms that I use is typically breast milk, breastfeeding, um, female mom, just for the flow of my speak itself, and just to be able to, I'm respectful that not all people identify that way. I do use them and they quite a bit. So that's also another one, but I would definitely, if there's anything more I should say, but I want to dive into this. Um, of course, more than milk, initiation, and why it's so important for us to start off on a good feet when it comes on to your breastfeeding journey. There are 5 things that I want to talk about when it comes on to our journey. I'm just going to look on to make sure that I'm keeping on task. Um, our birth actually does matter. So we're going to talk about your birth that you have. And I'll just say this together, like typically have a child will repeat and have another child. I call the first baby a test baby. It's the one that we freak out on, the one that we have to buy all the brands. We accept nothing but whatever we think is the best. And by the time we get around to another child, we relax into this comfort of parenting. And also, it also gives you a chance to do things a little different. I don't say better, I say different. Because I do believe that we do our best with the resources that we have, and the next time around we do different. So, so
I like that, Stacy.
yeah,
I definitely have a
I,
test baby.
yeah. So it's just like, I have a 14-year-old test baby. Um, part of it. So your birth matters. And then we're going to talk about the true effects of supplementation and break it down. And then we're going to talk about the first 6 to 8 weeks. If you remember, that's madness. So we're going to talk about that. And also knowing your history. And then we're going to end with support, like, building that support and how does it look for you. So the type of birth that you have really does matter. We're talking about whether you had a vaginal birth with epidural, I would say vaginal with no medication, vaginal with a medication or epidural. Particularly, that's what the big one that we think about. There are other medications that we can use. Also, any other medications used to induce labor. And it doesn't have to be, but sometimes, even though it's not a medication, a fully ball, but it can tire you out itself to get to the actual space when it's time for you to feed that baby, you're zonked out. So it's been a long birth. And then also, when it comes on to post-birth, complications post-birth, there are many moms that actually do end up in postpartum hemorrhage, postpartum preeclampsia. Some people come to birth where they come because they're preeclamptic and they need to be induced to get, have this child. And we talked about C-section, but C-section, all these things affect your birth. So typically, if you have a vaginal birth that's, unmedicated, and you have your baby, no complications, even if you have a tear, for the most part, latching your baby, and of course, waiting for the breast crawl, you have less issues with the first latch. And you have less issues with subsequent feeding. Basically, the less interference you have in your birth leads to better initiation of breastfeeding. Now let's talk about adding an epidural to your actual birth. Some people find that with an epidural, and actually with an epidural, there is a delay and sometimes in the flow of the copious amount of breast milk or just the flow of your actual colostrum. Let me get this out the way. I want to say this. Your colostrum is breast milk. Your colostrum's breast milk. Do not wait for your breast milk to come in. And Akila can say this, your breast milk's already there. What happens is that the flow increases after you have your baby. So all the oxytocin, good love that you're feeling, and you've had the baby and you're in high, you never felt this ever before, you're about to birth your placenta, and your breast milk starts flowing. It is not going to be that copious amount that you can pump and see that white in the bottom, but it's thick, it's sticky, and it's so needed because it's also one of its important things. It seals the gut, and it also helps to take out the meconium out of your baby's belly. Some babies have a little bit of it, and because they've been squeezed, can you imagine being squeezed for hours and hours and hours? And then someone's like, wake up, eat, and do all this stuff. Your baby don't have any time for that. They just want to take, a little bit of milk and fall asleep. Then also, if they have a bath after they have been, birth, that makes them sleepy too. And they may not want to feed right away. So those are some of the things that affect how we feed our babies. There's no need to bathe your baby right away. So you can wait for a little bit before you actually feed your baby, initiate, and then you can move from there. And just know that the type of birth you have, and of course, will affect when it comes on to postpartum hemorrhage. Let's talk about hemorrhaging after having it. It's scary. Nobody wants to think about it, but it does happen to lots of women every year. Every day, women go through this. And part of the thing is you go and you're protecting yourself, right? But you also want to birth and you have to take care. Lots of babies go on some form of supplementation. You're taking care of yourself, and the initiation comes a little bit later. Some parents don't get around until day 3, so day 2, maybe later on before they start feeding their baby. By the time they get to that, their baby's already been fed with, depending on your birth hospital, maybe donor milk, but in most cases, it's formula that's been fed. Say your baby was fed, I don't know, half an ounce, offered an ounce. That's a lot of milk in the first couple of hours, the first couple of days. And now your baby is zonked out and you're trying to come behind with your teaspoon or tablespoon of milk. You're like, my baby's not getting enough. So you feel like you're running the race, trying to keep up, and your milk is not enough itself. So, and another thing that's important is that if you've had postpartum hemorrhage, it is important to start having clinical lactation involved. So this is where it's not just about latching your baby. It's about latching your baby. It's about hand manipulation. It's about hand expression. It's about hands-on pumping. It's really also about pumping that breast milk over. So you could end up where you're triple feeding to increase the flow of your breast milk because, postpartum hemorrhage does, decrease the flow of your breast milk. Some women will see absolutely nothing. But one thing to remember is that to get on it as soon as you can, start doing something to increase the flow of your breast milk. Well, that's the part of it. Any questions about that? Let me see. I see some things in the chat, so I don't want to miss that. Okay. Type of thing. Let me keep
Yeah,
the
so
chat
it's
open.
just kind of
Yeah.
talking about, their baby's
Thank
breastfeeding and
Yeah.
your comment to the test baby. I do have a point. You said the breast crawl. You mentioned that earlier, and I
Yeah.
do greatly appreciate that. And I think that it's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
In the Western world, we are all about getting things done very quickly. And if you've ever had a baby, it's very fast in the hospital, and there's 100 people in and out of your room. But can you just elaborate a little bit? Because I think that's such an important piece. That's really
Yeah.
important to the establishment of your milk supply, and also getting baby to latch on early, that the hospital simply sometimes just doesn't have time for.
Yeah, that's such a thing because, the majority of women will birth in the hospital. And, I've had hospital experience in birth hospital, and although the majority of my work has been simply similar to yours in the NICU environment, taking care of sick babies, and of course in the community. But in that realm, it is get baby, your baby comes out, and right away we want to latch the baby and get the baby to feed as quickly as possible. You've been squeezed for hours, for hours. It is important to hold your baby. It's important to relax, lay back, let your baby go to your stomach. And it's instinctual for your baby to crawl around on your stomach, like basically push up like almost like a caterpillar and push from belly button all the way to your breast. And the smell of the amniotic fluid, the smell of your scent is actually present on your body. It is present and secreting from your breast, and they are going to crawl until they actually get to the areola. And they can't really see the nipple, like nipple, there's nothing really point, but they know by scent, hey, this is it. And they will actually latch on and suckle on the breast. Now, a thing to point out is one of the best positions to feed your baby to get a nice wide gape is in a recline, semi-recline, or all the way back position. So when you initiate breastfeeding and from there or initiate the latch you initiate latch in that way, you will find that even a baby that presents later on with some type of restriction, that parent may not have felt it to start because their mouth is completely open itself. So the position is so important for them to get the areola, because I remind people that it's not called nipple feeding. It's called breastfeeding. And it's for that reason, because we want your child to actually latch onto your areola, take all that tissue in and suckle in that way. So be patient, and be okay with that's another thing too, is like letting your birth team know that this is my plan. I want to have the breast claw. I want my child to take their time to find my breast. Latching in literally in the chart, it'll say my baby latched in 90 minutes. My baby latched in this much time. There's documentation to fit each style. So most babies will find the breast within 90 minutes. Some of them will take a little bit longer, but most of them will in 90 minutes will go ahead and crawl. And you can give some encouragement because a lot of people are excited. They want it to happen. You can give some encouragement. For the most part, these tiny humans are smart. They're really smart. They'll find their way to your breast. And so I hope that helped. So let's go on to the next point. The next point is supplementation. I kind of spoke about that a little bit in the first part. Supplementation happens all the time. And typically it happens for two reasons. We early supplement because we believe that baby is not getting enough. And the next time we do it because baby's truly not getting enough milk. So there's two different types of supplementation because there's a belief that they're not getting enough and there's actually a need. And there's also the other part that we're going to talk about is also called the fear of supplementation, because we need to talk about everything when we're talking about stuff. A lot of times we supplement really early, whether it's from our medical staff or from parents. And we hear from both parents saying, I didn't want to supplement, but the nurse said, and the doctor said, and this said, and I was fearful. So, and I didn't want anything to happen. So I gave my baby this, and now my baby's ruined forever. Your baby's not ruined forever. Your baby is not ruined forever. It does alter the plan that you have. And, I hear you, and that's something that we need to change. But if that was your story, just know, and, if that's what may have happened to you a little while ago, just know your baby is not ruined. What we want to do, though, is that when your baby is born, going back to setting up that this baby's going to take their time to latch, to suckle, and to feed itself. And then also, before you even start with that, let me go back. I can't believe I forgot to say this, but breastfeeding, lactation, chest feeding, education is a need. You need to take a strong one that's hours on end, not a 1 hour course, not a two. You really need to take a couple hours to dig into what it is that you're about to do. Because when you come to your birthplace, your lactation consultant, your midwife, your nursing staff is helping with initiation. And the initiation is never meant to come from a place of you don't have any knowledge. It's meant to come from a place that there is some knowledge. We do know that a lot of people don't have knowledge, but it's so important for you to prepare yourself before. So when you go, you're like, oh, I remember this. This is what they talked about. And you can also advocate for yourself in a better place. You're not fearful. If someone say to you, well, if you don't latch in 60 minutes, you're like, well, nothing's going to happen. My baby's just going to feed. And it's so good when you can speak from a place of confidence, knowing that things are going to be okay. And if it doesn't look okay, that's okay. It's going to catch on, and you have the resources. You have an LC in your back pocket. You have the hospital staff that's there. You have people set up to help you to do things. But those are the things, early supplementation, because there's a belief. So I like to have this, I should have had it, but you guys know what the bottle looks like, that 2 ounces of formula. And then you also have the breast milk, that's like a tablespoon. So it's basically here. And then we have a tiny belly, and your baby is eating all the time. It's called the midnight buffet, the all-day buffet. That's what it is. When your baby is born, it is going to be constant feeding. And it's not feeding every 15 minutes. It's not feeding every half an hour. But I'll tell you why it feels constant, because you never get a chance to go into deep sleep. They fall asleep in the deep sleep initially. Babies actually, it's not backwards. They go into deep sleep right away. We take about 2 hours to go into deep sleep. So can you imagine, I go into deep sleep right away. I wake up and I'm like, lickety split, where's my food? Because they wake up because they're hungry. And you're like, I was actually just going to deep sleep. So it's like being hazed. It's like a sorority or a fraternity hazing every time. And it's hard in that way because you've just come off the heels of a birth, depending on how long your birth was, depending on how arduous it is, depending on your birth. As I said, what type of birth you have, it can affect the outcome. Or also, if you're like, all I wanted to do was just to latch my baby, and now my baby's not there. So you have a separation and now you have to pump. So mentally, you have to reframe yourself and take yourself from your expectation and go to what your reality is. Because oftentimes your reality and your expectations don't match. And there are times that they do match, but because you're filled with all these hormones and everything going on, you're like, oh, something isn't right itself. So those, to keep myself, those are things itself that definitely can affect how quickly we choose to supplement our babies itself. Just remember, it's one of the things that we want to latch as, latch them the first time, latch them the second time, latch them. The thing it says early and often, right? Just remember early and often. Initiate right away, feed often. Initiate right away and feed often. If you're feeding often, you two are doing a dance. You're latching, they're suckling, and they're increasing your breast milk supply to 30 ounces, 35 ounces, 32 ounces, I don't know, whatever that baby wants in 30 days. Some people have a lot more because they have oversupply. We'll talk about those people another time. But the majority of moms do not have oversupply. They're regular people like myself. We make we make enough to feed our babies, and that's all you need. You don't need an oversupply. Another thing that can affect supplementation is things such as jaundice, your baby having jaundice. Many babies are born with jaundice. And if your baby's born with jaundice, they are not lazy, they're tired, they lack the energy, they lack the ability to suckle. If your baby's also small, it's small for gestational age, if they're IgA, if they're just a 5 or 6 pounder, they're not as chubby in the cheeks and not a 10 pounder, not to say that a 7 pound, but you see the difference in where I'm going. The size of your baby can also affect them suckling as effectively. But a jaundiced baby, no matter how big they are, 10 pounds, 5 pounds, 7 pounds, is a baby that's really not an effective feeder. So whenever you have a baby that's a jaundiced baby, feeding is going to look a little different. You may have to most times do some expression, whether it's pumping. And I do encourage you to pump. We don't want you to pump before the first 6 weeks, but in the case where your child has jaundice, you want to go ahead and express your breast milk to give your breast milk each time to your baby. It's going to be nice and thick and yellow. You're going to be looking at it like, whoa, look at this. But keep on feeding your baby that. Do not listen to the craze that says, oh, if you don't feed this baby, this jaundice isn't gonna go anywhere. If you don't feed this baby, if you're making no breast milk or it's so low, please, I'm begging you, give your child another means, whether it is donor milk. We would prefer donor milk if we have it. But if those milk or breast milk is not available, let's reach for some other artificial feeder that can help your baby. I'm not going to demonize things here because everything has its place, type of stuff, but we want to make sure that we are, feeding and initiating in a way that makes sense. If your baby has bulimia, if your baby has a low blood sugar, those are things that can affect feeding. And we also want to make sure your baby's getting a lot of milk, put in that milk into them because it changes the trajectory. And that means that you're also pumping. When you start out pumping, it can also change the way you think because now you can sometimes question how much milk you have. If you've had some early supplementation or any need for it, and you don't have an LC or you weren't planning on having an LC, I'm telling you, this is the time, if you don't know someone, to ask for resources, to find an IBCLC, to find somebody in the hospital. A lot of them have IBCLCs that can put you with somebody community-based to help you when you get out of there, out of the hospital, because it's so beneficial to keeping your journey going. And then also, let's talk about it. When your baby's feeding a lot, do we really feel like they're getting enough breast milk? Especially with that first baby, you don't know. You don't know. So you're like, is my baby? We're hardwired to feed our children. We are. We are hardwired to feed our kids. Clothing, food, and shelter. That's what we're supposed to provide. And most of us, we already provide the shelter, we already have the clothing, the everything looks beautiful. We're bringing our baby home to, and it's for you now to provide the milk, and you're just like, I'm not producing enough. Pumping is a two-edged sword. It's beautiful because it can help you in the time, but it's also can be contemptuous and hard because now you're measuring up yourself against, is this enough? So it's important to get early intervention to help you for supplementation, but those things can affect the way in which you actually feed your baby. Let's talk about the fear of supplementation, because I have met parents who are, I am going to feed all breast milk, and it is going to come directly from my body. And that's the only way, my midwife said, or my lactation consultant said, or I took this class. And we love it because you took that information and you're rolling with it. But the fear of supplementation, even pumping, can be detrimental to your actual health. Let's talk about engorgement. If you're not releasing that breast milk from your body, or that milk from your breast or your chest, you can end up with having serious issues. Number one, you're engorged. It's hard to get your milk out. You end up with lumps. You end up with early mastitis. It can go a little bit more severe than that. So we really want to empty our breasts as often as possible. And then there's ways to feed our baby. We can finger feed, we can cup feed, we can, syringe feed, we can bottle feed. There's so many options for feeding your child. And we will pace feeding your baby with a slow flow nipple, in an upright position, or laying to the side. These are things that can help to preserve your breastfeeding relationship. You have to protect your breast milk supply. I've never met an LC that will not tell you you have to feed the baby and protect your breast milk supply. If you do these two things, you will feed. If you have breast milk in your breast today, you will feed tomorrow. So keep that going itself. So it's so important to not fear supplementing if there's a need to supplement. I personally had to feed my child not from directly from my breast to start. I started off with my expectation it was going to be rosy, and I was going to birth this way, and he's going to come on out, and he was going to latch and do the breast crawl and everything. It was all, but my birth didn't go that way. He didn't do the breast crawl, and he was not in the mood to be latched to anything. He was in a different phase of life. So I was introduced to providing milk by pump. A nurse just rolled the pump in, and she's like, "Here you go, pump." And I was like, "What?" I wasn't ready for that, but I had to learn quick and fast. And there was no other option because for me it was that. So I didn't have time to think about if I was going to supplement or not. I was just like, I'm going to make this happen itself. And I learned pretty soon that I had to express at least 8 times or more because this thing was coming. The body is going to keep on producing milk. Just to let you know, automation, like you are going to produce breast milk whether you want to or not. Milk is going to come from your body, unless there's some other reasons why you're not. We can get into that a different time because developmentally, some women do have true low breast milk or no breast milk because of different things with their bodies. But those who can and will produce some or all milk for their babies will have physiologically, your breast milk will start increase in volume. And if it is not expressed, you will have, some serious engorgement, and engorgement will happen, just to let you know, no matter what, it is coming for you. It's just, we don't want edema. We don't want it to be so big where they're trying to reduce it in all sorts of ways. So express it is necessary to keep that going itself. Welcome. I noticed that while I was talking, I have other people coming into the room. Thank you for joining. This is great. So we're going to move on to we're going to move on to now the third, feeding and preparing ourselves for the first 6 to 8 weeks. I know that's wide. That's a big gap, but realistic, we should say the first, 12 weeks, really. The first 12 weeks is foot on hot coals, feet in the fire, because the day you have your baby is the day you become a parent. That is the first day that you become a parent. You're learning everything as you go. So you're expected to learn all these and put into action all this newborn care, diapering, wiping butt, knowing how all your baby's cue, and someone saying, look at the baby to know how the baby is. Let the baby, feed that way. If grandma's with you, everyone's calling. There's so much inundation with information coming, and you are tired, and there's all these other expectations of you. And the first, 6 to 8, 12 weeks, it's definitely a hard phase in parenting. For the point of actually feeding breast milk, it is critical that you actually are putting your baby to your body to actually take the breast milk away from you 8 to 12 times a day, or the same thing with the pump. I will also say if you are pumping, go ahead and find yourself somebody to properly size you. Because what it is that when you in the birth hospital, some birth hospital will go ahead and size you, but guess what happens after you've had the baby? A lot of fluid is on board. So you're swollen. I don't know if you guys remember sometimes you have the nankos after you have the baby and all that extra fluid is on. You're like, what is this? You
I
have
know for
extra fluid on.
myself, Stacy,
Yeah,
I was like up and down and up and down, and one was like
exactly.
this and one was like that. Um, Before you go any further, because I know you're
Yeah,
going to jump into, and fourth trimester is huge.
yeah.
Your second topic was packed with so much information. And one of my biggest takeaways from the whole entire thing is feed the baby, right?
Mhm.
You have to feed the baby. And I think it's really important for new moms, especially, to understand. And that's why that prenatal education is crucial, because you know
Mhm.
what to expect. And we spend a lot of time as lactation professionals, and I know practitioners, of talking about what to expect, right? We're doing that prenatal education, but we're also not talking about enough is what newborn baby behavior looks like. And so, if you understand what normal newborn baby behavior, infant behavior looks like, you'll have a better experience. And if you practice, train, prepare for anything, you have better outcomes. And the same thing goes with
Yes.
breastfeeding. And so, if you have a foundation of what this baby is going to be doing, the biggest day of supplementation takes place on day 2. And that's because
Yes.
your baby was sleep and bundle depending on their birth journey. And now on day 2, they're awake and they're like, wah! And you're like, oh my gosh, it's me, it's my breast milk. And this is when supplementation happens. But if you have those conversations about how much colostrum you'll be producing and what a tummy size looks like, then you're more relaxed to understand that it's not just your baby. This is what babies do at 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to highlight that because it's really important. And I think that, talking to our moms, we really need to let them understand, like, this is what is to be expected from your child at this point.
Yes, it's so important. Like understanding newborn development is and what should look like. And let's just say also when we say your baby should um, you know, nurse more rapidly, like we're giving you kind of like gauge, like at 2 weeks they should do this, at a week they should do this, at different phases as they increase and grow. We're giving you around the time. Each baby's journey is different. Each baby's journey. So they and also depending on how they come in the world, it can change. So knowing and learning your baby's cues is important. Having your baby in the same space as you is important. So having your baby close to you where you can see them and get to learn each cry over time, get to learn the movements, get to know all this stuff. You will have a whole bunch of mothers or parents everywhere. And you will find that when a baby cry or baby move, they'll know. It's kind of like when a child says, mommy, you'll kind of know what your mommy sounds like. So over time, it's like allowing what occurs to you. Someone said to me as a baby doula to say to me, like, you have to develop the art of what occurs to you itself. And it's so important to know that. And that's what it calls into going into taking the charge of parenthood is allowing yourself to see what occurs to you. So sometimes it's going to be hard because like I've been told that I have to feed the baby at this time, but what is your brain saying to you? What does this baby look like? Another thing also is that if you're truly trying to feed your baby from your breast, that schedule looks like this. Rip it up. It's not at every 2 hours. It's not at every 3 hours. Feeding looks very scattered. On average, you will be actually feeding 8 to 12 times. Average, that's what it is. But feeding could look like an hour and a half, then an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours and 15 minutes, 3 hours sleep, come back and have an hour and 45, 2.5 hours. So it's going to be over the place. But what we're looking for is that your baby is coming to your body and feeding, and the poops are increasing. Let's talk about poops. Day one poop. Day two poops. Day three poops. Day four poops. And we also want to look for color. We don't want dark tarry poop at day 4, but we want to have a different, that variation of yellowing in that poop, that green looks that comes. By day 5 or 6, a lot of babies who are getting copious amount of milk will have their poop looks yellow. It's not diarrhea, it's just breast milk. It is runny, it's watery. And I always say, if you feel like you are diapering quite a bit, then you're feeding just fine. If you have wets all the time and you're like, gosh, it's the eight times, your baby is intaking just fine. Now, granted, a baby could be intaking just fine and it feels like baby piranha teeth on your baby, on your breast. It still doesn't mean that there isn't an issue. It just means that when it comes on to intake, your baby is getting enough milk to their tummy. So a good way to say, always say, if my scale was missing, if I didn't have a fancy office, if I didn't have 10th birth and breastfeeded, if I didn't have all these things that I've learned over the years, what you will rest on is that your baby should have 5 or more poops for the day, wet nappies or diapers each time, and you're changing them typically each time they wake up. That should tell you that my baby's increasing in weight. Also, your baby will drop about 4.5 ounces right after, within 24 hours. They're going to decrease in weight. And then within 10 to 12 days, it's actually who says 12 to 10 to 14, but around 10 to 12 is where most pediatricians are comfortable with in the US, that the weight should start going back up to birth weight. I wish we did it from day 2, because day 1 we have extra fluid on board and it wasn't ours anyways. But I like looking at day 2, like what did your baby leave the birthplace with? I always say the hospital typically, because if it's a home birth, it's a little bit different. But what did your baby weigh on day 2? Oh, they were this many ounces. Oh, they were 6 pounds 10 ounces. And then on day 2 they were 6 pounds 6 ounces or something like that. I'm going to run with that and I'm going to go from there. But most babies, and a healthy thing to look for is that your baby's supposed to regain their weight. And if you're not sure and you're worried, please reach out to a lactation specialist. Please reach out to them, because in the first 10 days, Nakila can say to this, we have the quickest drop off in breastfeeding rates. We love to look at the numbers, and the numbers say by 6 months, so first we start about 88% of American families will start nursing. And then by 6 months, we are about 50 something percent. So we're pretty close. And then by 3 months, we are about what, a 37%. And for the numbers are different between Black, white, and Hispanic families, because that's how it kind of lays. Hispanic families actually initiate at a higher rate and they fall off at different rates. And Black families and white families are different. But what is similar for all groups is that we do have a fall off. If stats are taken within the first 10 days, we would like, whoa, what's going on? But as LCs and people in the birth community, we see this happening typically within the first 10 days, because it's a lot that's going on. We're unsure of our parenting skills. So that's where it is. But in the first 6 to 8 weeks, it's a lot of development. It's rapid feeding. Your breast milk volume is going up from a teaspoon or tablespoon, I should say, all the way up to 30 ounces or a little bit more, depending on where you are on the spectrum. That's a lot of work for you and baby. That's a lot of sleepless days and sleepless nights. That's a lot of baby changing diapers. That's a lot of looking at your partner and wondering what day it is. It's a lot of everything. And then and also you have doctor visits in between there. And you're probably trying to see my house doesn't look the way it's supposed to. So there's a lot going on in those first couple of weeks. Be aware that it is a all day buffet on sometimes. You're gonna have 2 to 3 growth spurts that happen in that short window between 0 and 12 weeks. That's a lot of growth. You bring home this skinny little mini, and then you're gonna come with a chubby one with rolls and all this stuff. It's a lot of work that you're putting in. So also in that time, show yourself some grace, please. Show yourself some grace in that time because it's a lot that's going on. So for yourself, I just want to make sure that I'm hitting all my points before I move on. Also breastfeeding accessories and all the aids and pinchers and all that type of stuff. We're going to talk about it. What do you really need to feed your child? Yourself. That's the most important thing. You need you. If I didn't have anything else, that's what I need. Add things as needed. If I were to buy one thing in this modern day, if I only had one item to buy, it would be my breast pump. I wouldn't buy anything else. I wouldn't buy a nipple cream, a nipple butter. I wouldn't buy any of the cups, the nothing. It would only be that because I know that in the event that my child needs something, I could at least pump when I go home. If you're in a hospital situation, you don't even need your own breast pump because a lot of them have hospital grade breast pump. And I'm telling you, if you're someplace, put down your handheld plug-in pump and use the hospital grade breast pump. It's a bigger motor. It's way more effective. It's way more efficient than your pump that says it's hospital grade. No, it is not, Bertha. It is not a workhorse. Unless it's a workhorse, the one that you're like, ooh, does it look any better than that? If you're not looking and thinking that this thing is ugly, then it's not gonna do the work that you need. But in the hospital space, use those. And at home, use your breast pump that you have. Um,
You can use
feed
those after breastfeeding is well established. So if
well
your supply
established.
is well established, you got it down pat, you're confident in that you have enough to feed your baby, then you can go to the, your personal pumps that you might get from insurance. But the hospital grades do have a bigger motor and they're just very effective and efficient.
They are. And then another thing, we're going to talk about these things, your hand. These are some great tools. Your hands, hand expression is something that we don't do enough of. Hand expression actually is the closest you have to your baby, the oxytocin, that touching your breast, that feeling, putting your hand back to your areola and opening and coming down. And you can actually have people teach you how to really hand express. That is really the way you want to express your milk. In the event you have to express your breast milk because of separation or need for early supplementation for any reason, you want to express yourself with your hands and into a small collectible clean cup in the cup. The reason why you really don't want to use a pump, there are 2 reasons. It really doesn't give you that touch and oxytocin feel. It's not as gentle, you're a little bit more sensitive, is that think about it's thick, it's viscous. That's what colostrum is. And I've seen way too much colostrum lost in the flange. Gone is my colostrum in the flange, and you're just like wiping it out, trying your best to get it, put it in a cup, and you get a lot more actually that way. And if you have to, even for the first 48 72 hours, keep on hand expressing if you can. You will be surprised just how much milk you can get out of your body. And it's also gentler on your nipples. It's so much gentle on your nipples. So definitely try it. It's worth its weight in gold to do that. As we said before, if you don't need to express, don't express. Triple feeding is hard. When people say breastfeeding is hard, we need to say triple feeding is hard. That is where you're pumping into a container, you're feeding your baby out of the container, and then you're washing and you're doing it's a lot. So you're basically doing the work 3 different times and you're warming the milk or whatever it is, taking out the freezer or fridge to feed your baby. It's a lot of work. You're doing parts and stuff. So when it comes on to, if you don't have to do that, lessen your work. If you feel like you need to express for someone to help you, if you can get in 2 pumps a day, you're a wonder person. You are. Like, hats off to you. I know for sure myself, I was in a haze and I was like, I just can't. But if your baby's latching, let them latch. Finding also a good support group or a good person in that time is so good. And we'll talk about how to build your camp, how to set yourself up, as you go. Let me race through because I feel like I'm running out of time. And then, of course, knowing your history, I'm going to go through this so fast. If you've never breastfed, provide breast milk before, go ahead and educate yourself. If you have people in your family that have never done this, you're the first one out the gate. Be the first one out the gate, but prepare yourself like you're going for the bar. Really take it up on yourself to learn. Have people in your camp. Also knowing that when it comes on to that, speaking specifically to Black women, it is Black Breastfeeding Week. Our history affects us so dearly. The history of slave, the history of separation, the history of having to work and choose between working and feeding our babies. It's wreaked so much havoc and separation of families. It's wreaked so much havoc on us and how we care for our bodies, how we care for our babies. And there's a lot of hurt in building. There's also a lot of misinformation. A lot of people are going to say, you're going to feed your baby? Like, really? You have time for that? Um, but just know that setting up yourself in a strong community of people who can support you is important, because if your mother didn't breastfeed you, if your auntie, if your uncle, if not uncle, but you know what, if they didn't feed or weren't around, then guess what? You are not going to have that support rooted in the know. They can say, I'm going to be there for you, but they don't know how to do it. So having that strong base community is so important. Um, and then also working outside the home. That's also, when it comes on to working and feeding itself, it's a juggle. It's a balance, it's finding. So setting up yourself before you go back to work with someone, with a specialist that knows how to set you up, and have communication with them in the first couple of weeks and touch bases over time as your supply ebbs and flow. It's so important to keep in the flow of your breast milk going. Your lactation consultant is not only for initiation, they are for extending your breastfeeding journey. They are your pocket, diary. They are your person that just keeps you going. If your goal is to feed for 1 year, 6 months, or 2 years, guess what? You roll with your lactation consultant for that time. Many insurance will pay for you to have touches throughout your breastfeeding journey. The last part is building your support. It is critical before you have your baby to build your camp. So what is mama going to be doing? What is uncle going to be doing? What is sister going to be doing? You need to say, what is it that I need from these people, and ask them and set the camp to say, okay, fine. I know that your talent is cooking. Can you cook and bring over? Can you stack my fridge? I don't want you to bring vegetables and all this stuff for me to chop and cook. I need them made and brought over. I need all these things. I literally, when I got blessed with foods, but it was food for me to make. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna do all of this. So I threw it out. It was going bad. I couldn't eat it. So prepared meals are good, or having a meal ordering service, because sometimes it's not stacking your fridge before. Having your friends to say, okay, fine, you're gonna come over in these hours, sit with me, help me in this time. Some people have a strong faith community and they're good with coming by, and lots of people in that church or service, they will come by and they will share their time with you. A lot of older people who aren't going to the day-to-day grind, if you ask or share, or they say, baby girl, what do you need? Husband, partner, what do you need? Don't say nothing. Yes, I'll take it. I will take the house cleaning. Take all the help that's up and ask for it. The best way to actually get the support you need is to speak before, because then you can actually build it in a way that fits you. When you actually get support after, it's also good, but it's meshed together, and sometimes you're a little bit resentful of it because it's not exactly what you want. And people do come to you and they will help in the way that they know how to help, but you need to actually tell them the way that you want to be helped. Don't feel bad for it because they want to help. Sometimes people don't know. It's kind of like with grief. People say like, "Oh, if you need anything, I'm always going to be here for you." And what do you need? But they don't show up because they don't know how to, or you didn't call them. If you call on people, oftentimes they will be by your bed. They'll be there. I've had friends that have literally come in the middle of the night and come to help me because I was there like, how are you doing? I'm not doing well. This is what's going on. And before I knew it, at my doorstep, and they were there. And I've returned and I've done the same for other people. So it's important to know that, asking for help, and it looks different also for the parent who's going back to work. Daycare, daycare is your camp. Start looking for daycares early. Start looking for daycares. I know this was a long conversation and we can go longer in it, but I'm very grateful for this space to be able to share this with you. Um, and yeah, thank you, Kayla. Thank you for doing this with me. If you are looking for lactation support, there are many of them in your community, can often be found virtually. I know myself, 10 Birth and Breastfeeding, I'm available throughout the US, but also if you're in my area, which is the Atlanta greater area, you can definitely find me. And I know somebody that knows LC, and we are quick to refer to somebody else too. So please, we want to get you help to feed those babies and take care of yourselves. We want you to take care of yourselves. It's so important. So
Excellent. Excellent.
thank you.
Thank you so much. We need like a few more hours if you're able to stick around until about 6. That would be great. But if you had a ton of information, even though I know the information, it's great to hear it again and hear it presented in such a dynamic way. So I hope that everyone on the call has gotten something out of it. We didn't have the opportunity to do introductions or anything like that. So we don't really know. And you guys have your camera off, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
But if you are a new mom, if you're within that, 4th trimester, the first 3 months after having a baby, and you do need support, you can just simply drop it in the chat for us. You can private drop it, select Stacy's name or my name, absolutely fine. And we'll make sure that we reach out to you and provide you with the support that you need to continue on with your breastfeeding or infant feeding journey at all. So please do not hesitate. We are a village. Reach out, let us know what support that you need. And again, I'm very grateful to have been invited here today to continue the celebration of Breastfeeding Awareness Month and Black Breastfeeding Week. So thank you guys so much. If you don't have any other questions for us, Stacy, do you want to drop like your email in the chat or something like that? Does
I
that help?
will. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. So I will, hold on, I'm dropping it to something that I'm like, I will not even look at that. So it's hempworkservices@gmail.com. I'm also gonna put my, everything that I am right here. And people say like I don't, but I do take texts if you reach out to me itself. And I'm also gonna put my my website there. I'm trying to use HTTPS, like, as they tell me to do type of
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm like, hopefully I'm doing it correctly. There it is. I
Look at
did it.
you. Look at
Yeah,
you.
I
That
did it.
HTTPS is very complicated. I never put that. I'm like, people will
Yeah,
figure it
I was
out.
told, yeah, I was told that that's the way I should do it. So I have asked for help and that's what they told me. So I'm going to do this. I hope that my web developer is looking at this and like she's learned well.
Bravo. Very fancy. So again, thank you so much. And I think that we are very respectful of everyone's time, right? And so if you don't have any other questions, I bid you guys a farewell and stay safe, stay happy, and just continue to do the very best that you can every single day. Thank you.
Awesome.